Welcome to today's Explainer. We're putting on our investigative journalist hats today to dig into the rapidly shifting scope and honestly the ballooning cost of the White House East Wing project. Instead of getting caught up in the political noise, we're going straight to the source material, the documented paper trail. We're going to examine the architectural plans, the court filings, and the legislative bills to figure out exactly what is being built right now on the White House grounds.
All right, let's dive right into this massive number, $1.4 billion. Yeah, that's billion with a B. As an investigator looking at the ledger, this figure is a glaring red flag. Why? Well, because this represents the current taxpayer request for the project, which was quietly tucked into a recent $72 billion Senate reconciliation bill, right alongside an additional $400 million proposal in federal customs fees. But to truly grasp why a $1.4 billion taxpayer price tag is such a massive deal, we have to look back at what the public was originally told.
You see, this billion-dollar reality sharply contrasts with what we were initially promised. Back in November 2025, the administration assured everyone that this would be entirely privately funded, zero cost to the American taxpayer. They repeatedly framed this whole endeavor as a patriotic gift. Our investigation today focuses entirely on the massive gap between that initial statement and the billion-dollar reality we just uncovered.
So, here's our dossier for today. We'll be looking at the zero-cost promise, the sudden erasure of the East Wing, the billion-dollar bunker, the bypassed guardrails, and finally, the books that actually predicted this exact outcome.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the zero-cost promise.
Just watch how these numbers shift over time. It's wild. In July 2025, the official White House announcement pegged the project at $200 million, fully funded by private donors. By September, it had crept up to $250 million. In January 2026, it hit $400 million, but still carrying that promise of zero taxpayer funding. But then, by May 2026, the paper trail reveals a massive pivot, a combined $1.4 billion taxpayer burden for security and construction, all quietly slipped into legislative packages.
The advertised vision was this elegant, 90,000 square foot ballroom designed to seat 650 guests. Sounds lovely, right? But the reality uncovered in the Senate bill is a $1 billion earmark specifically for the Secret Service for, quote, above-ground and below-ground security features. Suddenly, the security for the building costs exponentially more than the advertised building itself.
Moving right along to Section 2, the East Wing erasure.
Back in July, the administration assured the press that the new ballroom won't interfere with the historic building. They said it pays total respect. Yet fast forward to late October, and before standard oversight panels even reviewed the final plans, crews had completely demolished the historic 1902 East Wing. What was initially sold to us as an elegant addition very quickly became an erasure.
And you can guess what happened next. A massive lawsuit. The National Trust for Historic Preservation stepped in, and the court filings are just fascinating to read through. They essentially accused the Department of Justice of making flat-out false statements in federal court while the demolition continued unabated. For example, the DOJ claimed they had shown the trust non-public plans and that the military had explicitly asked the trust not to sue. According to the trust's legal filings, both of those statements were unequivocally false.
Which brings us to Section 3, the billion-dollar bunker.
Based directly on the DOJ's own defensive court filings submitted to fight off that preservation lawsuit, we finally get a look at what taxpayer money is actually funding. We're talking protective missile-resistant steel columns, drone-proof roofing, blast-proof glass, bomb shelters. There are even top-secret military installations and an underground hospital equipped with biodefenses. Guys, this isn't a ballroom renovation. They are literally constructing a military-grade fortress designed to sustain long-term, independent occupation.
And honestly, the true nature of this project was pretty much confirmed by the president himself aboard Air Force One in March. He actually told reporters that the military was building a massive complex. And get this, the ballroom essentially becomes a shed for what's being built under. A shed. This striking quote confirms exactly what our investigation shows. The highly publicized $400 million elegant ballroom was essentially just a public relations cover story for a much larger, secret underground bunker project.
That leads us right into Section 4, bypassing the guardrails. A project of this scale completely sidestepped multiple established democratic guardrails. Normally, altering the White House requires strict reviews from the National Capital Planning Commission and the Commission of Fine Arts. More importantly, federal law, specifically 40 U.S.C. Section 8106, strictly forbids erecting structures on federal public grounds in D.C. without express congressional authority. The paper trail clearly shows the administration knocked the building down first, intending to just ask for permission later.
So how exactly did they bypass all these rules? Well, they used national security as a procedural solvent. By citing tragic incidents like the shooting at the Washington Hilton Correspondents' Dinner, the administration argued that standard Democratic oversight just had to be skipped to protect the president. But independent reporting points out a glaring flaw in that logic. The Correspondents' Dinner had 2,600 attendees, while the new ballroom only seats 650. It physically could not have hosted the exact event used to justify its own secret, accelerated construction.
Finally, let's look at Section 5, the books that predicted it.
Way back in December, well before that $1.4 billion taxpayer request ever became public knowledge, a book called Ballroom Boondoggle by Democracy Vanguard analyzed the early stages of this whole thing, and their accuracy was uncanny. They predicted that the zero-cost private funding model was nothing but a mirage, and that the project's costs would inevitably explode into the billions, ultimately falling onto the shoulders of the American public through hidden legislative riders.
In Red World Ice Ghost, a fictional graphic novel techno-thriller from March of this year, the author portrayed the structure under the ballroom as a massive surveillance complex worthy of a James Bond villain. The hero is trapped and tortured by illegal government agents when she and her AI assistant Verdi investigate illegal operations originating within ICE.
So, I want to leave you with a provocative question to really ponder. As our investigation has shown today, the gap between what the public was promised and what is actually being built is absolutely staggering. We really have to ask ourselves, how do we balance genuine national security needs with public transparency and accountability, especially when altering our most historic democratic symbols? If the proper process is ignored today, what stops the erosion of our civic heritage tomorrow? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep asking the hard questions.